Here we come. So I sent out a little handout, which you should have gotten in your email. Ephraim, are you on the email list? If you want to get it, just message me in the chat your email address and I'll send it to you. Okay, so we begin the book of Bamidbar this week. And it so happens that we always read the Parsha of Bamidbar before Shavuos. On rare occasions, sometimes we also read Naso before Shavuos. But definitely the Parsha of Bamidbar before Shavuos. And that has to do with the preciousness of the Jews. Every Jew is precious. We're counted in the Parsha. And every Jew was necessary to be at Sinai. The sign of revelation only happened because everybody was there. And that has to do with the following discussion that we're going to have. We're going to focus on several verses in the beginning of the Parsha, as well as several Rashis. Sometimes the small Rashis you don't really pay attention to, because you just kind of think they're obvious and no big deal. But by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there was nothing obvious. Nothing was taken for granted. Things that seem to be obvious are questioned and examined carefully and fully. So the Parsha begins that in the second month, Hashem spoke to Moshe in the Sinai desert in the Oil Moed on the first of the second month in the second year that the Jews left Egypt. And he said, count the congregation of Israel according to their families, the fathers' households, according to the names of each male. Now, by the way, you will note that this is not the first time the Jews are being counted. In Parshas Kisisa, the pasuk says, "Kisisa as roish b'nei Yisrael lefkudehem," when you will count the Jewish people to the numbers, and it describes how every person would give a half shekel, and they were supposed to be counted. However, there was no counting according to the tribes. There was just a counting. This is the first time that we find that they're counted according to the tribes. And the verse goes ahead and says, from the age of 20 and up, all those who would fight wars for the Jewish people should be counted according to the numbers you and Aaron. Okay, that's all part of the verse that I didn't quote in the handout. Here goes the handout. V'itchem yiyu, verse 4 in the Parsha. Together with you there will be ish lamata, each man to their tribe. Ish roish levesa voisavu, each man is the head of their family group. And these are the names of the people who will stand with you. LeRuvain Elitzur ben Shedeir, for Ruvain Elitzur ben Shedeir. And I didn't copy and paste all the verses, but the verse itself does go on and lists all of the 12 leaders of the 12 tribes. Shimon was Shlomiel ben Surishadai. Yehuda was Nachshem ben Aminadav, he's famous. Yisachar was Nesanel ben Tzuar. Zvulun was Eliyav ben Cheloin. Ephraim was Elishama. Menashe was Gamliel. Benjamin was Avidon. Don was Achiezer. Asher was Pagiel. God was Eliasaph. Naphtali was Achira. And then the verse goes ahead and says, Eile Keruei Ha'eda. Nesiye Matos Avoisam, Roshe Alfe Yisrael Heim. These are the ones called from the congregation, the leaders of their fathers' tribes. They are the heads of the thousands of Israel. What does it mean they are called from the congregation? Rashi says, Eila Krui Ha'eda, these were those called of the congregation, Hanikroim L'chol Dvar Chashivus Shebe'eda, those who were called upon for every matter of importance that happened in the congregation. So they were called for communal matters. This doesn't mean that they were called literally by the congregation, like the people came and said, hey, can you be our counter? Can you help us count ourselves? No. Nor does it mean that they called the people when they had to have a meeting, that they called the people. That's not the job of the leader to call the people. That's kind of beneath him. He has messengers for that. Karue ha'eda means that they are called for communal matters. And the verse says they are the heads, the leaders of the fathers' tribes. Okay, they're leaders of the tribes. That makes sense. They are the heads of the thousands of the Jewish people. What does it mean, the heads of the thousands? Not the heads of the hundreds, not the heads of the 10,000s, the heads of the thousands. Now, there were many more than 1,000 per tribe. The smallest tribe had about 30-something thousand. So you could just say it's an expression for a leader of a large group. However, the Ibn Ezra says that they were the leaders of the thousands. If you recall back in Parshas Yisro, David mentioned Yisro, or a reincarnation of Yisro. But if you recall in Parshas Yisro, we had Yisro's recommendation that Moshe Rabbeinu set up a court system, and in that system, every 10 men had a judge. Every 50 men had a judge. Every 100 men, and every 1,000 men. If the judge who was in charge of your group of 10 could not address your question, you went to the judge of 50. If that was too hard, 100. If that was too hard, 1,000. And if that was too hard, anybody?
10,000?
No, there was no 10,000.
100,000?
Nope, no 100,000. Moshe. The simple reading of the text would indicate that all the difficult matters bring to Moshe, meaning to say, if the system that I set up for you, 10, 50, 100, 1,000, doesn't answer the question because it's too hard, then they bring it to Moshe. But not like it used to be that Moshe sat there all day and listened to everybody's tzaras. I mean, maybe he did, but not because he had to judge them. Maybe he listened to their tzaras because he was the Rebbe and he would give them some advice or whatever. But in terms of halachic questions, they had a system, and Moshe Rabbeinu only got the highest, most difficult questions. Now, the Ibn Ezra here says, when we talk about these tribal leaders being the heads of the thousands, it means they were the heads of the thousands. The heads of the thousands. Meaning to say the heads of the thousand had a head. And those heads were the tribal leaders. So these were like the leaders of the top leaders. That's one way of interpreting the Ibn Ezra's commentary. But there's another way. Listen to this. Very interesting. So how many Jews were there in total? No, when they finished the count, what was the final number? You can cheat and look it up. It's okay. You can ask AI if you want.
Approximately 600,000 between
Close,
the ages of 603,000.
closer. 603,550. So how many heads of the thousands were there? Yeah,
About 60.
no, 600,000. 603,550. No, it's not that hard. I've asked you harder questions than this. How many heads of the thousands if there's 603,550?
603.
603. Thank you very much. Okay, however, if you look back, you'll see that the tribal numbers, the numbers for each tribe, were not exactly at the 1,000 mark. Take, for example, I'm starting with the one that's listed last because that's what I have in front of me on the webpage. Naphtali was 53,400. Asher was 41,500. Dan was 62,700. Benjamin was 30,400. Manasseh was 32,400. Ephraim was 40,500. I'm sorry if I'm boring you. Zevulun was 57,400. Yisachar was 45,400. Yehuda, which was the largest tribe, by the way, was 74,600. Gad, second to the largest tribe, was 45,600. Shimon was 59,000. Why am I saying God was the second to last? Sorry, Dan was the second to the largest. Sorry, God was 45,600. Shimon was 59,300. And Ruvain was 46,400. So you'll notice there was no tribe that had exactly 1,000 mark. There was always a few hundred left, right? Or in some cases, more than a few hundred. Like God was 650. He's the only one that had a 50, by the way. All of them were exactly on the 100 mark. God was the only one who had a 50. Take note. I don't know what that signifies. That's just something to take note about. Anyway, so what if you were in the group of 400 left over from one of the tribes, or 600, or 200, or 550? Who was your judge to answer the questions that couldn't be answered by the leaders of the 100 level? You had your leader of 10. You had your leader of 50. You had your leader of 100. Actually, the one tribe that had 50, I forget which one it was already, but they didn't even have a leader of 100. But most tribes had a leader of 100, but you didn't have a leader of 1,000 because the last group did not have that. Okay, so here's what the Ibn Ezra means according to some. The Ibn Ezra means these 12 leaders were the ones who got the leftovers from the tribes, put them together, and they became the ones in charge of those thousands. All right? Which tribe was put together with which other tribe to make up the 1,000? That I couldn't tell you. And which was the one that was chosen to be in charge of that group? That I also couldn't tell you. That information I don't have. But that's perhaps the meaning of the heads of the thousands, that they took the leftovers that were less than 1,000, put them together, and they were the heads of those thousands. Anyway, back to the handout. The next Rashi says, on the verse 17, Ha'anoshim ha'elu, these men. Rashi says, Es shneim eser nesim halalu, these 12 leaders. Asher nikvu lo kan, that were specified here, b'shemos, by names. What is going on with this Rashi? What is difficult to understand in the verse that Rashi is trying to answer? Vayik, again, I'm reading the verse in Hebrew and English. Vayikach Moshe v'Aaron, Moshe and Aaron took, Esa anoshim eila, these men, Asher nikevu b'shemos, that were specified by name. Which men? Obviously, the ones who we just listed. What other men would we be talking about? These are the ones that are specified by names, the heads of Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. So what's Rashi saying? As anoshim ha'ela, as shneim aser nesim halalu, these 12 leaders. I mean, we just listed them. Yeah, we know they're the leaders. Who else? Who else is there here? Asher nikvu loy kan b'shemus, that were specified here by name. What is Rashi saying? Asher nikvu loy kan, that were specified here by name. What do you mean here? Like here, not elsewhere? And only here, not elsewhere? And where else would we be talking about? Why is anywhere else relevant here? What is Rashi saying? Asher nikvu loy b'shemus, Asher nikvu b'shemus, that were specified by name. What is Rashi saying? Specified here by name. All right, these are the questions, my friends. But in order to answer these questions, we have to ask you some other questions. Or rather, the Rebbe asks other questions. We're pretty Chabad here, Ephraim, in case you haven't noticed. This is a sicha of the leader of the Chabad movement, Rabbi Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Okay, so here's the question. Why does Hashem have to tell Moshe the names of the heads of the tribes? He already told them their names 1 month ago. Because in Parshas Nosoi, which happened a month before Parshas Bamidbar, don't be confused by the fact that Bamidbar is before Nosoi in the order of the Torah. That happens sometimes. Sometimes the Torah is written out of order. But in the end of Parshas Nosoi, we read about the Chanukas HaMizbeach, which is the consecration of the Mizbeach, and how the leaders of the tribes approached Moshe and said they wanted to sacrifice first on the altar before everybody else. And they also wanted to donate oxen and wagons to the Mishkan. And indeed, Moshe accepted their donation. And that took place on the first day of the first month. It's in the 7th chapter of Bamidbar. And all of the names of the leaders are given there. Now you could say, well, we have not read Parshas Nosoi yet. I mean, we read it last year, but that was a year ago. That's a long time. We are reading their names for the first time, so the Torah tells it to us. But that's not the way it's written here. It's written here as Moshe's talking to the as Hashem talking to the Jewish people. No, sorry, I'm confusing myself. As Hashem talking to Moshe and telling him to take these 12 men, all of whose names he knew already. Hashem could have just told Moshe, take the heads of the 12 tribes. And he would have known exactly who that is, because just a month ago, these 12 men brought donations to the Mishkan, brought wagons, brought oxen, brought sacrifices, and Hashem said to accept them, which Moshe did, and of course, they're the leaders. Now you could say, well, we don't know their names yet, because we haven't read Parshas Nasa yet. Okay, so he could have said to Moshe, take the heads of the tribes, and then the Torah could have said, oh, by the way, their names were A, B, C, D, E, and told us the names. But in the text, it says Hashem told Moshe the names. Moshe already knew the names. Hashem doesn't have to waste time going through the names. What is the point of Hashem doing this? This is the question. So the answer is that over here, the leaders of the tribes were getting an upgrade. You see, up until this point, the leaders of the tribes were leading their tribes. They were in charge of their tribes. They had to see to it that people got along. They had to be the heads of the thousands of the leaders within their tribes, like we said, maybe gather groups together, whatever. But they were not leaders who had to take part in matters of community for the entire Jewish people. Take, for example, what they did at the end of Parshas Nosei. They brought a donation sacrifice to the Mishkan. And that was on behalf of not just them as private people, but on behalf of their leaders of their tribes. They brought also special donations to the Mishkan. We read about that. Again, they were the leaders of the tribes. They wanted to honor their tribes by bringing those special donations. However, over here, we find them doing something special. And that is as follows. The verse says that they are going to help in the counting. And the way it says it is, I don't think I quoted this verse. It says, Hashem told Moshe that he's going to count from age of 20 and up. V'itchem yiyu. Together with you is going to be one man per tribe. The understanding of itchem yiyu, together with you, is going to be, instead of just v'itchem and with you, the understanding is that they are going to be involved in the count. Just like Moshe and Aaron were involved in the count, so too the heads of the tribes are going to be involved in the count. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu obviously was involved in counting all of the Jews, not just one tribe or the other. He was the leader of all the Jews. Aaron HaKohen, his brother, also was the Kohen Gadol of all the Jews, and he was involved in counting all of them. Now, you can understand why the leader of a tribe is needed, so that Moshe Rabbeinu can ask him when it comes to a question of about a certain individual, is he really from this tribe? Maybe he's from a different tribe. Are you sure of his parents' lineage? Are you sure who his parents are? And so on and so forth. Moshe didn't know every Jew in his whole camp. I mean, he was a very busy man. How would he have time to know every person, every individual above the age of 20? So he had with him the leaders who kept tabs over their tribes, and they knew what was going on in the tribe. And yes, either they knew everybody or they knew the people that they had to know in order to figure out who everybody was, the heads of the families, and so on and so forth. They could quickly find out if there was any question about somebody's lineage. So we understand why they were necessary to participate in the counting of their tribe. However, a careful reading of the verse indicates, Ve'itchem yiyu, with you will be, that these leaders were involved in the entire count. That means that Reuven's leader, was that Elitzur? Elitzur ben Shedeir? I'm getting forgetful in my old age.
Yes.
Thank you. Reuven's leader, Elitzur ben Shedeir. And Shimon's leader, Shlumiel ben Surishadai. Yehuda's, Nachshon, Yisachar's, Nesanel, etc., all of them were involved in counting all of the tribes. And the obvious question is why? Why does Moshe need the help of the head of Reuven to count the tribe of Shimon, and vice versa, and so on and so forth? What is this all about? And the answer is something that we have to understand about this count in general. When you count a group and you count each person as one, basically you're saying that they're all equal. They're all equal. That's why they're all counting as one. You're not counting them by their wisdom. You're not counting them by their wealth. You're not counting them by their physical strength, by the size of the family, nothing like that. You're just counting them as one, which means as far as this count is concerned, you're considering them all equal. Now, of course, everybody does have certain qualities that are unique, every Jew, no problem, no question. But as far as this count is concerned, you're not paying attention to those differences, and you're focusing on what unifies them and something in which respect they're all equal, which is, of course, the very fact that they're Jewish. A Jewish person, more sophisticated, less sophisticated, more learned, less learned, more righteous, less righteous. They have an neshama. They're chosen by God. And in that respect, they're all the same. And therefore, we're going to all count them the same. And that's what happened in Parshas Ki Sisa. No individualization. Every Jew was counted as one, finished. Here, in Parshas Bamidbar, we have a bit of an anomaly, because we're counting each Jew, and we're counting each Jew as one, but at the same time, we're saying, hey, what tribe are you from? I have to count you separately because I need to know what tribe you're from, which means that we are paying attention to the differences. And we're saying Reuven has its own character. We want to know how many Reuvenites there are. And of course, what's the special character of Reuven? Well, if we look at their name, maybe that'll tell us, Reuven, see that I had a son. Maybe they have special power in terms of sight, not physical sight necessarily, but spiritual sight, insight, deeper awareness, and so on. Shimon has their own unique quality. Shimon has to do with hearing. They have some special ability to hear, not to hear physically necessarily, but to understand, to get to the depth of a matter, to really empathize with somebody, to hear them. And then, of course, we have the tribe of Yehuda. I'm skipping Levi because they were counted separately. And Yehuda, of course, is the leaders, and they have qualities of leadership. We have Yisachar, the Torah scholars. We have Zevulun, the business people, and so on and so forth. Every tribe had its unique qualities, and they're being counted as members of their tribe because we are giving importance to their individual traits. And now you can ask, once we're paying attention to their individual traits, then how does it make sense that we're counting everybody the same? If you're not paying attention to the individual traits and you're saying, all I care is about the fact that you exist. You're a Jewish person, You're precious. You're needed. Hashem wants you. He needs you. That's it. What exactly does he need you for? What exactly is your calling? That's a detail. We're not getting into that now. We're just focusing on the fact that you're Jewish and you're an integral part of the nation, and that's it. So you're one. You're the same as everybody else because everybody has a unique role, and you're in. But once we're counting, and we're saying, "Oh, you're a Reuvenite. You got this quality. You got this quality." So maybe we're not all equal. Maybe seeing is better than hearing. You can hear something and you don't really get it until you see it. And maybe a Torah scholar is better than a business person because he's a holier person. Or maybe just the opposite. Maybe a business person is better because he's bringing holiness into the outer world. He's making a Kiddush Hashem. He's sanctifying Hashem's name, and he's supporting the Torah scholar. So whatever it is, they're not all the same. Why are they all being equal?
Rabbi,
Yes,
can I just ask a question?
you may.
It was based on lineage and their qualifications, but what about the mixed multitude? I know they had to put that in question, but what about the mixed multitude? The goyim that came with them.
The mixed multitude is not counted even once. If you don't want to mute yourself,
Hold on.
the mixed multitude was not counted even once. Not in Parshas Kisisa, not in Parshas Bamidbar, and not in Parshas Pinchas, where they're counted again. Not counted. We wish them well. We wish them luck. Moshe Rabbeinu accepted them, and obviously there was something special about them. He saw in them a hidden holiness, and they did join the Jewish people. They became part of the Jewish people. To this day, we're probably descendants of theirs, I imagine. But we don't know how many there were. We don't know where they lived. We don't know how they integrated. We don't have much of a history about them. Somebody should write a book about it, figure it out, but I haven't seen the book yet. So here's the answer, my friends. The answer is that it's actually a greater sign of unity to count people after you recognize their unique qualities. Because it's one thing to say everybody's the same when you're not focusing on the qualities. And you're saying, okay, yeah, well, you do this, you do that, not important to me. All I care is you're a neshama, you have a neshama, you're good, you count. What's special about this count is that we're recognizing each person's qualities, and we're saying you can accomplish something unique nobody else can accomplish. You have this power. Nobody else has it in the same way as you, yet you're still counting as one. Why are you counting as one? Because every person has to recognize that just as they contribute something unique, the other person also contributes something unique. And without the other person's contribution, you are also lacking. Just like in a physical body, you have the head and you have the brain. And without the brain, you can't function. The brain is in charge. It thinks, it directs, it controls everything. Yeah, but without the heart, what do you have? You have no pumping of blood. You have no life. And without the liver, you don't have clean blood and you can't function. And without the bone marrow in your bones, you don't have a refreshing of your blood. And without the kidneys, you're not getting rid of the waste. And without the skin, you're not blocking the bacteria from entering your body. And without your feet, you can't walk. Without your hands, you can't do. Every organ is needed and is essential, and Hashem made it, and there's nothing extra. The appendix is not extra. The tonsils are not extra. Don't ask me what they're for, but Hashem knows what they're for. Maybe by now the scientists also figured it out. So if you look at it from that perspective, even though some things actually do serve a function that seems more important, at the same time, you recognize that everybody's function is essential. And without everybody's function, we cannot operate in the way that we need to operate. So therefore, in that respect, everybody's counted as one, because we recognize the necessity of every single Jewish person. That is what is the accomplishment of this particular count. And now, my friends, we get to answer the question.
The tonsils act as a filter out bacteria from the body.
Oh, very good. And the appendix?
Not sure, I can look it up.
Okay. I have
Probably
no
something
doubt that
similar.
it's something.
Probably similar, something similar.
So here's the answer, my friends. The reason that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't just told, oh, by the way, take those leaders, would you? The ones that brought sacrifices a month ago, and they're going to help you here. That wouldn't do it. A month ago, they were not functioning as leaders of the Jewish people. A month ago, they were functioning as tribal leaders. Now, Hashem is plucking them out from their earlier function and saying, you, Elitzur, and you, Shlumiel, and you, Nachshon, you are now becoming leaders of the Jewish people as a whole. When Hashem calls you by name, he's giving you power. Maybe up until this point, they didn't even see themselves as having the capacity to lead an entire nation of 603,550 men only. Don't forget about the women and the children. They didn't see themselves in that capacity. They only imagined that they could take care of their tribe, and that's it. Hashem specifies their name, and Hashem says, you are going to be with Moshe and Aaron to count all of the Jewish people, because I want you to recognize how the other tribes are important, and that's why you're participating in their count, and I want you to impart to them how your tribe is important. And that's how you're going to participate in their count. And this is why we mentioned that they were the Roshei Alfei Yisrael, the heads of the thousands of the Jewish people. Because according to the opinion that says that they were the ones who took in the leftovers, the leftover numbers, the remainders, so to speak, so they did have some training in this field of uniting tribes, because they had already taken groups of different tribes together, let's say 600 and 400 to form 1,000, 550, 200, whatever, put it together. So they already had experience in dealing with members of other tribes, and that was their training. And now we can look back at the Rashi, and we can start to understand the depth of every single word of Rashi. Okay, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba ba. The first Rashi that we read, Eila Krui Ha'eda. Rashi says, Hanikram l'chol davar chashivus shebe'eda. Those who were called upon for every matter of importance that happened in the congregation. This is the first time that they're being called for a matter of importance to the congregation, not just for their tribe, but for the congregation. Now is where they're being called for it. This count was a count that was integral for all of the Jewish people, and they are participating in the count of all the tribes, and now they are given that title of Krui Ha'eda. They never had this title before. This is a unique title that they have as leaders of the entire congregation. And on verse 17, Ha'anoshim Ha'eda, as Shneim Asar Nesiim Halalu. Listen to this. Ha'anoshim Ha'eda, Ha'anoshim means men. And Rashi says, as Shneim Asar Nesiim Halalu, these 12 leaders. What is Rashi saying? Of course, the men are the leaders. We just told you who they are. The answer is Hashem is taking ordinary men and he's turning them into leaders. Asher nikvu loikan b'shemus. Hashem has called them here by name. Hashem has appointed them and given them the power of leadership by calling them by name. They went from being private people or semi-private people. They were already leading their tribe, but they went from being semi-private people and they are becoming leaders of a nation. How do they have that power? Hashem is giving it to them. Hashem is saying, you have the power. And this is a lesson, my friends, a lesson that we must all take for ourselves. Sometimes you think that you're faced with a task that's beyond your capability. But if you realize that Hashem has given you that task, then you realize that Hashem is pointing to you and he's calling to you by name and he's saying, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shloima, whatever your name is, he's saying to you, or Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, whatever your name is. Hashem is saying to you, you can do this. I am giving you the power to do this. And there are so many examples of this throughout our history, where people seem to be ordinary people. They didn't exhibit extraordinary traits. But when they were put in a situation where they had to do extraordinary things, and they realized that they were the ones who could do it because of the circumstance, they needed to do it, they brought out a deep strength within themselves that they never knew they had, and they were able to accomplish it. And that's something that Hashem gives us. Hashem puts us in that situation because he knows that we have the power to do it. And what we have to do is to answer the call. Hashem gives us the situation, which is like calling us by name. What we have to do is to answer the call and say, yes, I'm here. I'm ready to do it. That's the Sikha of the week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure.
I got a couple of things for you.
Questions?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure. Thank you for joining.
I got a couple of things for you.
Go ahead.
Let me just see. I hope I don't lose it because I pulled it up before and I lost you. One is the appendix has long been considered an organ that has no essential function. However, recent research suggests that it may play a role in immune and digestive health. It acts as a reservoir for beneficial bacteria, helping to repopulate the intestines after illness. It may also contribute to immune defense by exposing the white blood cells to antigens in the gastrointestinal tract, potentially aiding in antibody production.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. Yasher koyach.
Both to you. Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure. Have a good Shabbos, everybody, and a good Yom Tov. And I'll see you, Mr. Hashem, next week after Shavuos.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Are you here for Yontif?
I'm here. I have this little shul that I have to take care of, so I don't really have options in terms of going over for Yom Tov. That's a thing of the
This
past.
is where? In Surfside?
Surfside Minyan, it's called 8846 Harding Avenue. We have Shachris, Mincha Mayev every day. 8846 Harding. We bought a house. We're there about 4 years, going on 4.5.
This is not the old Rebbitzon's house, is it?
No, that's on the 9300 block. We're on the 8800 block. We're a few blocks.
And that's the Sparty Shul.
That's the Friday show. We're a backyard minyan that started in COVID in somebody's house, and we graduated and became a shul.
Very nice. Right on the border, down by 88.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Very good.
Beautiful. Haslachas, sei gesund, have a great
All the
Yom
best.
Tov.
You too.
Thank
And
you,
to
you
everybody.
too. Thank you.
Great
You
Yom
too.
Tov.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
My pleasure.